Marketer of the Day, number 496. Move the needle, celebrate wins, and money mindset conversations with Jen Hemphill. Hey everyone, we're so glad that you made it to join us. We're having a nice conversation with Jen Hemphill, and you can find out all about her at jenhemphill.com. And she helps women who are tired of the traditional money advice, and she helps people gain a renewed sense of control, confidence, and freedom in their financial life. She's a money confidence coach and accredited financial counselor, and she's the host of the Her Money Matters podcast. So we have a lot of interesting things to talk about. So Jen, glad to be talking to you.
Thanks for having me. I am pumped to talk to you today.
I am as well. So, what has you excited these days in your business?
These days, it's really the book that I have coming out. As a podcaster, I never saw myself writing a book, but here I am. So I'm really looking forward to this because what I've done with this book, it's called Her Money Matters, The Missing Truths from Traditional Money Advice. I took my money journey and put that into a book because I was always one that I felt good in terms of how I managed our finances, our family finances. But in about year 10 of our marriage, I looked at our accounts, our investments account, and I looked at the debt that we had, and I was realizing that we weren't moving the needle. And I had a lot of shame, guilt around that because I had family and friends always asking me for advice. And here I was, granted, we weren't doing bad, but we weren't where we wanted to be 10 years later, right? So that started my journey in really learning why I was following all the traditional money advice. I read a bunch of personal finance books, put them in action. We were having some success, but the needle wasn't turning in terms of we still had debt. We continued to deplete our emergency funds. We really weren't increasing how much we were putting away in our retirement accounts. So that's what I dive into this book is like those missing truths. What is not talked about enough in terms of the money experts? Because basically money experts, the messages really lies on save more, spend less, and get out of debt, right? But there's other aspects of our money that really aren't talked about, like our mindset that is missing and which is getting people stuck.
Yeah, a lot of that makes sense, especially the part about sort of being stuck in the middle, so to speak, right? Of knowing all the facts, knowing the plan and what you're supposed to do, and doing okay, chugging along, but then saying, well, I'm eventually going to run out of time, run out of life, right? Like things need to be more picking up the pace. And also that part of, well, some of these, people who teach finances who say like, well, here's the plan or here are the steps you need to take, maybe don't factor in the mindset thing and don't factor in the habits so that maybe people can't stick to some of these plans because of their bad habits, or maybe they sort of stick to the plan, but it's not fun. And so it's like long-term, it doesn't work. So, a lot of that makes perfect sense. And so I like how, and it sounds to me as you're explaining this, that this whole idea of the book kind of evolved, right? It's not like you just like 10 years ago said, I'm going to start a book. It sounds like this evolved from your own actions, and then maybe the podcasting fleshed out some of the ideas. And then now it's like, I got to write the book, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I saw a lot, the women that I work with, when they come and talk to me and potentially become a client, and then they become a client or not, depending on what they do. But one thing that they mention over and over again is they've been doing the right things, right? They've been following the advice, but they're stuck. So they're basically like in my place. And the other aspect too was the confidence piece. Even though they're doing great things with their finances, they don't credit themselves for it. And they're lacking that confidence, where is another part that I come in play with is really helping them increase that financial confidence, because that's important. Without confidence, we don't keep moving forward, right? Or we move forward sluggishly. We don't move at a fast pace. We don't move with energy and excitement, right? And that really affects the action that we take to move towards our goals.
Yeah, I like that a lot, because it seems like, And this is just from like what it seems that is out there as far as the financial advice, or if you go to a financial advisor, it seems like it's always sort of bleak, right? It's always sort of like, well, you
Hmm.
better be strict with yourself and follow these rules, and maybe basically hate life and chip away at the debt, because that way otherwise things won't get done. So I'm really curious about these sort of confidence and this kind of encouragement and small wins and things like that. So I mean, what's your take on this? How do you begin to approach this problem of maybe like celebrating or giving yourself a break as far as your small financial successes?
Right. It's really, really important. So for example, when I'm working with a client, and even on my podcast, one of the big things I'm big at is, I just said big things twice. Anyways, one of the things that I'm really important is to celebrate those wins, because as human beings, we have this long to-do list, we tackle it, and maybe sometimes we don't finish it up and we get frustrated, we get overwhelmed, but we don't take a moment to acknowledge what we did accomplish, right? And when we take that moment to acknowledge and celebrate, and it doesn't have to be with balloons and everything, but just really is about acknowledging and feeling good about what you accomplished, that will help you move forward. That will keep you motivated and inspired, right? So I always, when I work with clients, we always make sure that they acknowledge their money wins, anything big or small, right? It's not about how grand, maybe you paid off $50,000 in debt in 6 months. That's a great win, but it could be that you finally started really being consistent with saving your money, right? And maybe before you weren't putting away anything, and now you're putting away $100 a month, right? So it's about that consistency as well. But really celebrating those money wins is really important. They build your confidence. It keeps you in action. It just gives you, and the other piece too that it helps is, and it helps you when you build your confidence. One thing that is not done a lot is money conversations. People are afraid to talk money. It's taboo. You don't hear about it a lot, right? If you hear it on a show or in the media, it's either the market declining or maybe someone winning the lottery. But we don't hear, even on TV shows, those money conversations. If we do, it's more of like we didn't get the bills paid, right? Nothing else, because when you think about money, we don't want to talk, when we talk money, we don't want to talk about necessarily the bills, right? It's not always about the money, but it can be about our money stories, how we grew up around money. It could be about some money wins, which is why I bring this up. It could be about maybe a money tip that you learned, that you've implemented, and you are just really, really happy how it's worked for you.
Well, great. Well, to sort of hammer the point home as far as these money conversations and these money wins, do you have any interesting case studies or stories about that? Because I kind of have the feeling like I want to live vicariously through some of your clients a little bit, because I imagine that maybe some people were feeling discouraged and about to give up, and then after taking some of your advice and celebrating these little wins, maybe they kind of have a renewed sense of enthusiasm about the whole thing. So any interesting stories along these lines?
Oh, absolutely. There's various, but I'll choose one here. So, I was working with a client, and when she came to, she's actually a freelancer, right? And so the money is not consistent month after month. And she was fairly good with managing the money, but she wasn't. She was still actually, she had just finished off paying some debt, but she was worried about the retirement. She was worried about really making ends meet, those type of things. So we put a plan in place, right? And she was also lacking a little bit of confidence as well. And when I started working with her, and we put the plan in place, she literally just took off. The plan, the plan that was in place really, what's important too here is that we created a plan that was customized for her in her season life, what was important to her. It wasn't about what I thought she needed to do. We discussed what she wanted to achieve, right? She wanted to travel more. She wanted to purchase a car in the future, and she wanted to save that money up, right? She wanted to put away for those months that were a little lean when the money because in her career there was definitely some months that were more busy than others. And so we put this plan in place, and she took off and did really well. And her from the steps that I gave her and from the really the plan we both put together, because it's about getting the client involved and making sure that I meet her where she's at, right? I strongly believe in that, and strongly believe in understanding what they really want to do. It's not because with money experts talk to the masses, and their guidance and advice is good, but they're talking to the masses, and we need to understand that we're the experts in us. They're experts in the money, but we're the experts in us, and we know what's best for us. So we set up that plan in place. And what's really, really interesting, what evolved with this was not just her confidence levels. She was actually in our community became just so helpful with other people that had questions, and really jumped in and was able to offer like some tips that she's learned. And on top of that, she started, so that was a part of money conversations, talking money, not and being confident with that. And she also was interviewed on a podcast, right? So that was, I think, that was a huge win, because she went from being a little shy in terms of talking money to deciding, yes, I am going to get my money together and put, and set some goals, to really becoming confident, offering tips, being helpful in our community, and being interviewed on a podcast. So I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, it is. That's super amazing that she went from lacking confidence, and she kind of gained confidence from the money aspect of things, gained more confidence from setting these goals and hitting them, and then felt that need to then help others. And I mean, it just sounds like more and more of a snowball. And then also a lot of these stories that you're telling really are like emphasizing the point for me that, well, number one, it's really tough to fudge it and figure it out on your own. But then number two, it's easy to maybe take a course or read a book, and you might get a lot of interesting things out of it. But we all have our different situations, right? In more ways than one. That we have these different professions. We have maybe seasonal jobs, or we have income coming in different ways, and we have different goals that we have depending on our lifestyle and our personality and what we want, our age and our location, and all these different things. And so it makes perfect sense that you can get a few things from someone who's one of these mass market financial people, but you're going to get the advice to the masses, which tries to maybe cover all the bases, but it's not necessarily one size fits all. So this is making a lot of sense why a lot of people need a coach like you to meet and maybe have say some of those things that maybe they've been afraid to say, and have that outside objective person to look at how things are and make a plan and maybe help them along to make the plan a reality.
Absolutely. And I have to emphasize that podcast was her talking about her money. It wasn't just a general podcast about other things, but it was her having a money conversation.
Super cool. So
with other person.
So it's not like she was like, oh, I have to suddenly become a teacher. She's just talking about her own experiences. And so speaking of the podcast, so you have this Her Money Matters podcast, and I'm really curious about like what's the format, and what kind of things do people get from listening to it?
So the format is I interview women, and I also have solo episodes. And so with the interviews, I basically have two different types of interviews. So I interview women that will share their money stories, so their challenges, how they grew up around money, because money stories are so important. And the reason why money stories are so important, it really leads to our mindset. It's what develops our mindset. So, and what improves our mindset. So we have to understand our past money stories, how we grew up around money, what we saw, what we experienced, and acknowledge that and understand that, so we can compare it to the now and see, are we repeating that cycle, right? Because if we repeat a cycle that really doesn't serve us, that affects our mindset. We're gonna continue to have thoughts of, we can't afford this, we don't have enough money, those type of things. So that's why it's really important to acknowledge those things. So So basically, with and back to the podcast, sorry, I really got, I digressed on that. So I have share with us how they manage their money, what they've learned along the way, those type of things. Then the other part of the interviews that I have are just with different financial experts. Like, yes, I have an accredited financial counselor, a money confidence coach, but I don't know it all, right? So I bring in whether financial planners or those that are more experts in taxes, in different areas that is not my zone of genius. I interview those people as well. And then the solo episodes that I do are just based on themes or questions that I see in my community. So that's how my podcast is structured.
Super cool. And I love your thought process in that, because I know that sometimes I don't know, it's really tough sometimes with a podcast to think of new ideas or be like, oh, great, I have to make 20 more episodes of that. But I like how you've mixed it up, right? Sometimes it's just you tackling whatever topic seems to be the hot topic. Sometimes it's a client, a success story. So that way it's sort of the relatable side of things, but then also to bring in those guest experts to fill in the blanks where maybe like your knowledge stops. So I mean, that's really cool. You have 3 different types of episodes to mix it up, keep it interesting for yourself, and keep it interesting for some of those listeners too. And so I like the idea of that money story, and it makes perfect sense how like you always hear about these statistics about how like when married couples fight, it's like a huge percentage is about money. And so that would make total sense, where if the spouses are arguing about money, and then the kid grows up with that and then has all these limiting beliefs that are kind of installed at an early age, then grows up and passes it down. So
Exactly.
so with these money stories, is it always the same story, or is it pretty similar a lot of the times, or is it kind of all over the place?
It's basically the same theme. So it's either limiting, right, or an abundant one. So in limiting, it could be we don't have the money, money doesn't grow on trees, those type of things. So it's basically the same things. It's just a matter of knowing and understanding that. And I always recommend to write down, not just think about it, right? We can think back, oh yeah, when I grew up, this is what I heard. But writing, I always really resisted this for a long time to writing it down. There's power to writing things down rather than just thinking about it. So I always recommend that you write your past money story down, because in the process of writing, well, oh yes, I heard a lot of we don't have the money. In that process, you can write down uh, how that affected you, right? So you're going to be able to discover and have a better understanding how that impacted you. And then I also recommend for you to write a present money story. And that present money story, again, is how are you feeling around money right now? What kind of thoughts? Do you fear looking at your bank account? And then compare that to your past money story. And then the third money story is your future money story. So how do you, in the future, what do you want to have, and how do you want to feel around money? And you write that as well. So that way you acknowledge the past, you potentially change what's in the present to better serve you, and then you really have a better understanding of how you want to be and feel and have in the future as well.
That is super great, and that's good advice in general, right? Just to write things down and not keep it all in your head, because it seems like, at least with me, my brain plays tricks on me. If I think back to childhood stuff, or I play a movie in my head, the movie changes. But you write it down, and you're forced to box yourself in a corner a little bit and commit to what you're saying. And then once you have that written down, it doesn't change. And that's the thing that you can maybe revisit in a month or two, and you'll be like, whoa, I thought that the movie that was playing in my head was always the same, but I wrote it down, looked at it with fresh eyes, and it's like that statement, those words, that story, that didn't change, but I did. And also, just it seems like this would really help to get clarity in the same way that writing a diary would, only this is like a diary with purpose.
Exactly.
So you've mentioned a little bit about you have this community. So is this a free community? Is this a paid community? Do you have like courses and things like that in addition to the book and the podcast?
Yes. So it is just pretty much an add-on to my podcast. And that's found on Facebook, and you can find it at /community. And then I do have what's called the Her Money Matters Academy. And in the Her Money Matters Academy, I have it's not showing there right now because I haven't reopened it, but I have a membership component as well, and then some different digital products and some mini courses on that site. And I do one-on-one coaching as well. So the membership program is for people that are more independent and don't need a lot of the hand holding, and they can just follow the materials that are in the membership. And we have accountability as well, but is not as much in an individualized as with the one-on-one coaching. So that's basically in a nutshell what I offer.
Well, super cool. So, and that's great. So that if someone can figure out how it fits into their budget, or if it fits into their personality, if they're
Right.
the kind of person that if they need that one-on-one help, or if they want to go at their own pace, that sounds super great. And so with these different mini courses and things like that, can you give us a taste of like what sorts of things will people accomplish once they join some of these?
All right. So basically, we have, like I mentioned, some mini courses and some digital downloads. So I've got the budgeting templates because a lot of people, that's where they get stuck is the budgeting. So I've created different budgeting templates for different tastes. And then I have what's called the Ultimate Money Kit, which basically it takes you through a process of really setting up your financial goals and how to get there. How can you accomplish? So it's the step-to-step process to do that. So those are just some of the things that you can get on the Her Money Matters Academy, or you can just go to jenhemphill.com and get that as well.
Well, super cool. And so, I mean, we've covered a lot in our conversation today about all these money related things from, having a budget and goals and mindset. And would you say, like, out of all these things, is there something that jumps out to you as maybe the number one mistake that a lot of people make when it comes to their money? Or is there something else as far as what that top mistake is?
I think the number one mistake for me, and when I look at the clients that I've served, when I've looked and just really think about my audience, has been you needing just letting that fear overtake you, right? So because they're afraid, a lot of things that I hear is I'm afraid to look at the numbers, right? I'm afraid, but you have to look at those numbers. You have to take that step forward and look at those numbers. So, and they let the fear overtake them, and then what in turn they don't do anything. So that is basically by far the number one mistake, is just letting fear take over and not looking at the numbers, when really the numbers aren't going to do anything for you. They're just numbers in a spreadsheet, numbers on a piece of paper, numbers in the account. But it's really, you have to know what your bottom line, and what I mean by bottom line, I mean what is left over after all the expenses are taken care of. And that's the number a lot of people don't know. Everybody will know how much income you're making, but in terms of expenses, they might know some of the fixed expenses, but in terms of like just all the general expenses, that people don't know how much money they're spending, right? It's all over the place. And you have to know that bottom line. And that bottom line is the income minus expenses. So it could be a negative number. That means you're overspending. It could be at zero, which you're spending every single dollar that you're making, or it can be a positive. And if you're in a positive and you're not doing anything with that money, it disappears, right? That money disappears because all your money has to have a job. You have to put it to work.
Well, great. And that makes perfect sense to me. And it sounds simple, but I think that's a really powerful concept of knowing your bottom line and like toughening yourself up, or at least getting through the fear of looking at those numbers. And I mean, you're so right. It's the way I think about it is like, if you had cancer or diabetes or something, you wouldn't just ignore it. It's still there, whether you look at it or not. And And yeah, and I think that will help a lot of people as far as realizing that it's just a number, right? They're just digits. It's just a 0 through 9 on a spreadsheet. So why let it get the best of you, and why ignore it when you could tough it up a little bit and look at it? And then once you get past that, and you can see, all right, where am I at? And then based on that, then what should I do? Should I get out of debt, or do I have money left over? Should I pay this off or put my money to work and multiply it? You don't know unless you actually take a good look at those things. So, I mean, great stuff. And so jenhemphill.com is the place to be. And is there anywhere more specific you'd like to send people? Like, is there a specific freebie, or is jenhemphill.com the place to be?
For the freebies, you can go to jenhemphill.com. And if you're interested in the book, you just can go to jenhemphill.com/book.
Super cool. You make it very easy. No super long URLs. So just the front page or /book to get that book. And thanks a bunch, Jen Hemphill, for stopping by and setting us straight on what we need to know and think and do about our money. I appreciate the advice. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you for having me.
Need more guests for your podcast? How about a podcast that's set up in the first place? Schedule a call with us right now by visiting doneforyoupodcasting.com.